Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be in Australia, New Zealand. Welcome to the Understanding Microsoft Azure Fundamentals. My name is Raj Redressa. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer at Bespoke Training Services and looking forward to really spending half an hour taking you through some of the essential knowledge around Azure, and of course giving you a chance to really ask some questions and get involved as well. So just to give you a brief introduction, I'm working for Bespoke Training Services. Bespoke is an authorized training partner for Microsoft Azure. The Azure partnership only actually started last year, but we have trained in excess of 39,500 students and supported 1,200 different organizations with developing key cloud skills over the past decade. And we're excited to offer Azure live instructor-led training courses across Australia and New Zealand. I'll tell you a little bit more about them as we wrap up the webinar later on. Also, just to let you know that we will be recording this session. So if you need to skip out for anything, you will get the recorded version of the session delivered and emailed to you after the webinar. If you have any particular questions, feel free to post them in the chat window. I'll keep an eye on them. I am kind of working solo, so I'll try and type and respond as we get through. And maybe actually just to get a little bit of interaction, maybe if I can ask you to do a brief introduction, just let us know your name, where you're from. I'll do something similar. This is my brief introduction. I say brief introduction, but it's actually almost my life history. So here's a little bit about me, so you have a bit of an introduction to reference where I'm from, what I do. But as you can see, my name is Raj. Surname can be pronounced like someone who doesn't dress well. It's a bit of a dad joke, bad dresser. I'm a software trainer. I've been working with Microsoft technologies for 25 plus years as a Microsoft certified trainer, in the days even before cloud existed. And I've been working and partnering with Bespoke Training Services for 5+ years. My background is predominant in the IT infrastructure space, as I said, delivering training courses for Microsoft, other vendors, as you can see in the list in the chat window. Expectations, just to set your expectations, really in this half an hour, I want to meet your expectations, but to set your expectations, really what I'd like to do is give you a good overview of Microsoft Azure or Azure if you prefer. And as a personal background, I've been living in Auckland, Aotearoa, New Zealand for about 20 years, having moved here from the UK, kept fairly busy with family life. And the main reason I mention this is I do have 2 dogs and a cat, and I'm crossing my fingers that neither of them will, or neither the 2 dogs nor the cat will be making an appearance on screen. So that's me in a nutshell. Please feel free to just pop in to the chat window. Hi, my name is, and I'm connecting from, just where are you watching from today, as Fiona just said. Just be interesting to hear where you're all from before we start the session. Get a bit of interaction. And feel free, of course, to use the chat window as well as just saying, hi, I'm perfect, thanks. Safe, if I pronounce the name correctly, from DXC in Sydney. Feel free to post it to everyone. And of course, you can also use the chat window. Thanks, Kumar. Oranga Tamariki from Wellington, New Zealand. Fantastic. Pratap, Telstra, in India. Got someone from Brisbane. Fantastic. John, big fan of Raj's workshop sessions. Okay, from the University of Auckland. So yes, okay, John, yes, of course we have met previously. Matt from Sydney. Shane from Adelaide. Okay, fantastic. Shashi from Auckland. Okay, Far North District Council. Lisa from Kerikeri. Okay, Steve from AUT in New Zealand. Okay, Rashida from Oranga Tamariki, Adelaide. Okay, Mark, Richard from Wellington. Okay, fantastic. So there's quite a few there. I won't shout everyone's names out necessarily, but thanks so much for doing that. Just gives a bit of interaction. And again, feel free to, of course, ask questions through the same mechanism as well. So welcome everyone, wherever you're connecting from. Good morning, good afternoon. Let's crack on and let's start talking about some of the understanding of Azure fundamentals. So if you weren't already aware, Microsoft and Azure is one of the leading cloud platforms, leading cloud computing platforms in the world, and offers really a full range of services and products that can meet most organizations' requirements. Now, again, picking up some of the organizations, I know some of you are connecting from maybe government organizations, commercial organizations. Welcome also from Fiji. Actually, I just noticed your message in there as well. So, really, there's a lot of products that can meet most organizations' requirements. Microsoft, as I said, are a leading cloud computing platform, and they are seen, as far as the Gartner Magic Quadrant is concerned, to be both leader and visionary in terms of cloud services they're providing. Now, I'm going to post links as we go along, so feel free to keep these links for your reference as need be. If you want to find out a little bit more about Microsoft, Azure, and of course this Gartner reference, I'm just going to post that into the chat window. Feel free to have a look at that. I won't go into too much detail, but that's really where Microsoft and Azure comes from. And as I mentioned, there's a comprehensive set of services. So 200 plus services. In the half an hour that we're spending together, I'm not going to try and cover off every single one, but I'll give you some high level overview of some of the aspects that you can really use or you may use for your organization in the cloud. So as the slide also suggests, the ability to run those applications, whether it is using the Azure cloud, but maybe also the hybrid connectivity. So maybe you've got situations where certain applications will continue to run in your existing on-premises data center. You can set up hybrid connectivity. Maybe for some of your organizations, you're working with other cloud vendors as well. Again, this ability to have multi-cloud capability is certainly available with Microsoft Azure, and the ability to run services at the edge, which, if you're not already familiar with the idea of, can really help to improve the performance of certain applications by using the way that Microsoft have architected the Azure infrastructure, which I'm going to be talking about very, very shortly as well. Now, the key features to get across is it gives you flexibility. So you choose the tools, the framework. So some of you may have come from an infrastructure background, very much like myself, and you can use tools that can help you to support that infrastructure, whether they're going to be the portal, the graphical interface that we can use through a browser to interact with Microsoft Azure, or whether you're taking more of a DevOps approach, using templates, automation, PowerShell, etc., to deploy those services and solutions as need be. One of the other great benefits that we get with cloud is the ability to scale. So as the demand for our application changes, because of the large investment Microsoft has made in the various data centers, which again, I'll talk about very shortly when we talk about the global infrastructure, the ability to increase or decrease the capacity and pay on demand. So paying really on a consumption basis, rather than the larger investment that organizations have to make with on-premises data centers. As I mentioned, I think that this slide just reiterated, of course, this hybrid capability, seamlessly connecting an on-premises environment into the Microsoft Azure environment. So there's a little bit of a key overview of it. And really getting into a little bit of the detail, some of the services, it's a big list of services, of course, that we can start to take advantage of. Some terms that you may or may not be familiar with that I'd like to introduce. We have the ability in Azure to use what's called infrastructure as a service. So examples for this would be, instead of running virtual machines on premises, you may run those virtual machines in the cloud, in Microsoft's data centers. So that's sometimes referred to as IaaS, or infrastructure as a service. So porting maybe existing applications, bringing those virtual machines into the cloud is certainly an option. But maybe if you want to have less responsibility, there's also the ability to have platform as a service. So platform as a service, maybe I'm building a new application, some of you are developers, or you want to run a database in the cloud. That's where platform as a service, or PaaS, comes into place. And again, with the 200 services, to help us understand maybe where they are, there's various categories. So yes, we can run virtual machines, databases, storage, web applications. The more microservice-based architectures that you may run on containers, think Docker or Kubernetes, if you're familiar with those technologies, mobile apps, and of course the whole industry, I guess, is, and general society, I guess, is talking about artificial intelligence and some of the capabilities that they may bring into the equation as well. So like I said, there's pretty much services that can cover a broad spectrum of most organizations' requirements. Now, I've got a couple of links that I'll post in specifically. If you're not already familiar with infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, please feel free to have a look at that link. And then from those links, you'll also be able to find out more about the various services. And I guess just building on top of that as a high-level map, and like I said, with 200 services, we're not going to try and cover them all in the 30 minutes that we've got allocated for this webinar. But as you can see here, from an infrastructure perspective, we've got compute services that we may have at the bottom, like running virtual machines. So we can run virtual machines in the cloud. That would be that infrastructure as a service. Networking services, I'll just highlight a few of them. So we can run what's called a virtual network, or a VNet, that we can then run those virtual machines in. Various storage services that may meet our requirements, whether we need to have binary large objects. For example, we can have those in what are called storage accounts. I've got a little bit of discussion around security and identity towards the end of the webinar, but a significant consideration. I noticed that a few of you, of course, were coming from government organizations where, of course, you may have personally identifiable information that you're storing on behalf of customers. So making sure, of course, security is covered off, prime consideration. And that's, of course, just some of the infrastructure services that are available. A lot of talk in the industry. And again, Microsoft Azure can help support this. The idea of serverless, where you have less responsibility for managing and maintaining a lot of the infrastructure that we'd like to run those in. Again, won't go through into the details of all of those, but that's really, again, high-level capabilities there. Some of you, if you're in that developer space, you're building new applications, tools to support some of the DevOps approaches that you may have. So we've got the Azure DevOps tool sets available there, Visual Studio, and the ability, for, of course, for us to improve the way the applications will run using services that are going to run at the edge. And that could be closer to where the consumers of those applications, either in your own on-premises data center or closer to where consumers may be connecting to those applications that you've built. The other point to make here, and I guess if I can just zoom in particular to our part of the world, how have Microsoft architected this environment? Well, they've started by building data centers in different parts of the world. So in the same way that you might have your own on-premises data center, they're building these data centers, but they're at scale. A significant number of systems inside those data centers, power, redundant networking, internet connectivity, etc. And collections of those data centers are placed into what are called availability zones. The design of this is such that in case there's a partial failure, think of some of the more recent natural disasters, flooding, fires, etc. You have the ability to still continue to provide services because there'll be multiple availability zones that exist within a region. Now, the regions that are relevant, if I can just do a quick zoom in here, in our part of the world in particular, Microsoft have got a presence in Australia East, Australia Southeast, so read that as New South Wales, Victoria, and also Australia Central, particularly for government organisations, so thinking in terms of Canberra and ACT. There is also an announced region in New Zealand North that is due to go live in the near future, so of course that's going to be based somewhere in the Auckland area. Now, if you want to find out a little bit more about this and you want to understand how the Azure architecture works, I'm going to post a link and do a brief demonstration. So this is a good place to understand what the architecture and the global infrastructure looks like. So feel free to take that link that I've just posted in chat. I will do a quick demo of that one because I think it's quite a nice interactive way of understanding where things are at. So there's the link, datacenters.microsoft.com/globe/explore. And this can give you a bit of an idea of some of those terms that I mentioned, with a nice visual kind of aspect to it. So if you have a look on screen, or if you're following along with me, you'll see, of course, as we look in Australia, New Zealand, the fact we've got the Australia East, which, as I said, is associated or essentially in New South Wales and supports what are called availability zones. So there are 3 availability zones. Yes, Indrani, I've just seen your question. Yes, the recording will be sent out after the meeting. So if you do need to pop out, feel free. You'll be able to catch the rest that you missed as well. No worries, thank you. So yes, as I was saying, we've got the Australia East, which has been around since 2014, based in New South Wales. And that's got 3 availability zones designed to help us in case there's a failure of one of the data centers, maybe again, like I said, for examples, bushfires, flooding, so on and so forth. You'll also see references, of course, to Australia Southeast, which is based in Victoria. Again, been around since 2014, so 10 years. So a lot of time there, and the availability zones coming soon. And then finally, of course, you'll also see references to Australia Central. A little bit more recent, so yeah, 6 years ago, based around in ACT. And then lastly, a reference, of course, to this New Zealand North, which was announced and is coming soon. Of course, like I said, it's going to be expected to, they're obviously building the data centers and some of the aspects that are required to have that region and to support it in the New Zealand area. And that's going to be one of the factors, I guess, to think about, is likely to choose those regions because you have residency requirements. Where must my data reside? And where are most of my customers and consumers connecting from? So again, like I said, I think that covers most of you who said, you're in various parts of Australia, New Zealand. Fiji, I guess, could come into play. But if you're working for a global organization, of course, the fact that Microsoft have a presence around the world. So again, feel free to have a look at that. I won't dwell too much more there. And if you want to drill into the bit more detail around the data centers themselves and how the data centers are built out into availability zones and these regions, feel free to just click onto the link for Microsoft Data Centers. And I'll just post this into the chat window as well. and that'll give you a little bit more of an idea, of course, of how they are run, where they're located, so on and so forth. So use that as a continuing learning exercise. I'll go back to my slides. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to post based on that. And I'll move into the next discussion point. Some of you, if you are software developers, so you're writing code and you're following the DevOps approach and maybe using continuous integration, continuous delivery, so you can release new versions of your applications and systems on a more frequent basis. So you've taken this agile approach to software development. Again, there are a series of tools that Microsoft provide for Azure DevOps and collaboration. So again, I think I've got a posted link if you want to find out more about their capabilities into the chat window as we speak. So like I said, really appealing to the individuals or organizations who are maybe more in the software development space, developing the applications using your preferred language, but equally, of course, the ability for us to kind of appeal to the infrastructure and bring some of those existing applications in through some of the other services that I mentioned, like infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. I'll move on from there. And I briefly mentioned, of course, the need for compliance. So some of you may be working for organizations where you have strict requirements in terms of where your data can reside. And there are a series of tools that Microsoft provide to make sure that you can adhere to any compliance and regulatory requirements that you may need to adhere to. And it's the premise, which is not unusual, I guess, in the security space, is thinking about defense in depth. So not just relying on one single service to provide protection of our data, but multiple aspects that you can use to protect from potentially, threat vectors like bad actors trying to get access to that data. And again, there are strong security controls that Microsoft will be responsible for those physical data centers that they will be running the services in. But of course, you may be then consuming off the back of that. And if there are specific requirements that you need to adhere to, so some of them which might be global standards like the ISO 27001 standard or the CIS benchmark, the Center for Internet Security, or if you're dealing with credit card data, so that's PCI DSS, payment card industry, you can still meet the compliance requirements to run those services, or some of the more regional services. So some of you, if you are working in organizations in Australia, where you may need to follow IRAP, APRA, or ACSC, Australian Cybersecurity Centre Essential 8 requirements, or for those of you, of course, in New Zealand as well, following the NZCC framework. Now, again, if you want to dig a little bit more deeper into those aspects, I'll just provide some resources in the chat window. Bear with me a second as I just grab some links. Because again, there's a lot of detail that you may want to just dig into if this is of interest. So if I can just pop this into the chat window, there's the first link, which is going to be talking about security in general, which, like I said, it should be a prime consideration of any organization, and it's certainly a prime consideration for Microsoft and the security they provide. But I've provided links in there around security, and of course some of the offerings which are regional specific to our part of the world: IRAP, APRA, ACSC, and NZCC. So, of course, as part of your learning process, your continued learning process, I'm going to provide a couple of links. Now, again, it's very limited time that we've got with the 30 minutes allocated for the webinar. So if you want to dig into more detail, we actually have some training courses that I'll share some resources from. But if you want to find out more about where you're at on your learning journey, Bespoke runs some of those training courses. I personally run some of them, 1-day or 4-day training courses, and it really depends on where you're at. So if maybe you're just looking to get an overview, you want to get some foundational knowledge, there's foundational on Azure, but also Azure Artificial Intelligence Fundamentals. And then if you're looking to move on beyond that into some of the intermediate levels, we've got Azure Administrator, Security, and then some of the design aspects for designing the infrastructure, and then developing. So if you're more in the developer space, we've got training courses that align with that. And then, of course, we've got some solution-based options, again, depending where you're at, that can support your learning journey. I'll just, again, if this is something you think may be useful for you to continue your learning, I'll also propose some other links that you may find useful, where you can do a little bit of self-learning and self-paced learning. So I'll just post these links. These are from some of the in-person training courses that we deliver at Bespoke that may help to support your continued learning. And really, just to break it down, again, not sure which kind of area you're all focused on, But whether you're in the IT profession, which is where I've classically come from, that infrastructure space, now we've got training courses that can help if you're in that space. If you're in the software developer space, absolutely as well. Or maybe some of you come in from the data science, or you're wanting to move into the artificial intelligence. So really the training courses and the capabilities in Azure can meet all of where you're at. And I guess this graphic is quite interesting because now we're really getting to the point where I guess we have to have a little bit of a skill set which is complementary, maybe not just being specialist in one aspect or another, having that flexibility of being able to understand, okay, well, I need to understand some of the data analytics or some of the development aspects as part of that process. So again, training courses and solutions that can help wherever you might be. And there's also an alignment. If part of your motivation is not only just to understand the technology, but also to get certified, Microsoft have a series of certifications. And again, big list here. I won't try and cover all of them. I will post some links where you can find out some resources on these various certifications. I think it's coming up in a later slide. And these certifications are formal certifications where you are tested your knowledge from an exam perspective. There are other ways that you can also do this as well. So I'll come back to that very, very shortly when we talk about credentials that Microsoft have as well. So those certifications, these are the classic ones. And certainly, as I mentioned, I've been in the industry and been kind of following and working with Microsoft for 20 odd years. So there's a direct alignment between the training courses and the certifications. So we've got the fundamental certifications, again, whether it's for artificial intelligence, Azure Fundamentals, or from the data perspective. And then associate level certifications, again, AI, security, general administration, developing, database, data engineer, data scientist, before we get to that kind of expert level that we've got at the bottom. So if this is, again, part of your motivation, part of what you might want to be finding out about is the credentials. So let me just share a link in chat and I'll do a brief demonstration. These credentials are essentially now broken down into two aspects. Let me just bring that into a quick demonstration. So the credentials that Microsoft now have as the classic, and if some of you have been around in the industry for a while like myself, you may have done MCSEs, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineers, which is what I started many, many years ago. But the two different parts now is we still have those kind of classic certifications, which is what I've just been posting around. So browsing those certifications, you'll see the same aspect. So hey, I want to find out the certifications that are available for Azure, okay. And you can find out more about some of those links that are there. So certified Azure Administrator Associate, if you're in the data space, if you're into looking to move into the Azure artificial intelligence or AI, so on and so forth, certified developer associate. So again, range of credentials, kind of original classic, if I can refer to them, their certifications. But if I just go back a couple of steps there, we've also got this idea of what's called applied skills. So the applied skills, it's a relatively new launch from Microsoft, middle of last year, I want to say. So these applied skills are really more real world, if you like, which is not to say the certifications are not, but they can get you skilled up on a specific area that might be a problem that you're dealing with for your organization. So these applied skills are something that you can do simply by taking an evaluation of this applied skill online, and again, just evaluating your applied skill. So these can be then added as badges, of course, to wherever you need to, your LinkedIn profile, so on and so forth. So I'll just pop applied skills, and this complements what we've already got with those existing certifications that, of course, I've been posting with as well. So there's nothing stopping you doing some certifications, some applied skills, but again, very much focused on certain aspects. So feel free to have a look through that and continue your learning. Really what I'd like to also share is there's a lot of resources available online. So we've got a series of free top training resources that you may find useful. So I'll just pop this in to the link. So if you want to continue learning, and I'll also demonstrate the other one. So this is the free resources that I've just popped into the chat window. And maybe, and again, I know I've been very limited in time, I've kept it pretty high level. Now, maybe you want to set up an environment so you can test out what it's like to work with Microsoft Azure. Anybody can set up a free account. So that free account We'll give you a certain amount of credits that you can use to try out and test services. That's the other link that I'll just post into the chat window as well. So again, feel free to use that. And continuing the theme of free, part of what you'll see if you go to the bespoke training site and you go to the blog where we're talking about those training resources that are available, is a lot of the Microsoft training is available for free. So if you want to get up to speed and you want to self-skill, if you like, the learn.microsoft.com portal will give you a lot of those resources. And this could be complementary to some of the in-person or the virtual instructor-led training courses that we run at Bespoke, or alternative. It depends on whether you're a bit of a self-starter and you say, actually, I can just do all the training myself. Absolutely. But for some of you, if you want a bit of guidance, you want to have discussions, you want to have the group discussions that maybe come with attending a training course. Now, all of the training courses, Microsoft have actually now published for free directly on their Learn portal. So, you say, okay, I'd like to get up to speed on Azure, and again, choosing whatever service you might want to find out about, or you want to do it from the roles. Let's go with one of the roles. I'll just say I'm a database administrator, and you'll then see the various modules that are available that you can simply add to your Microsoft Learn path. Then that'll be a series of training that you'll be able to go through, combination of videos and examples that you'll see there. And in some cases, maybe even some hands-on exercises that will guide you through getting some practical experience. So like I said, feel free to use a combination of those free tools that are available. But as I said, part of what we do at Bespoke is running the training courses. So if you want a little bit of guidance and maybe you want some support as part of the process, we run some one-day training courses. So there's an Azure Fundamentals course. In fact, the next one I'm running is next Monday. But yeah, there's one-day training course on Azure Fundamentals. You'll find out more about it, again, in the same place in Microsoft Learn, or the Bespoke website that I'll share shortly. And then we've got a follow-on from that is the 4-day Azure Administrator course. Actually, I don't think we've got the details in here, but if you're a developer, we've got a similar kind of thing with a scheduled set of courses for developer, also for security, and actually for design as well. So like I said, feel free to have a look at that, and you'll find out more about that in the following 2 links, which I'll just post out now as well. So I'm just going to pop another couple of links in there. So there's bespoke training on the website. We've got the Microsoft Azure Learning Paths, which just matches up with what I've presented earlier on, and which training courses are available. And also, if you want to just ask some questions, if you want some support on, hey, I'm learning Azure, I'm pretty new to it all, can you help me out with that? So yeah, good question, Enid. So for the solutions architecture certification, yes, one of the first things you want to do is the foundational one first, and then of course then do the solution architecture after that. So yeah, I think the recommendation is you do the AZ 900 followed by the AZ 104, so the foundational one. So actually, I might just go back to that question here. So yeah, if you want to be doing like you're describing, I'll just get rid of all this ink here. So as per a question that Enid just asked that some of you may not be able to see, you can start with Azure Fundamentals and then move from there to the Azure Administrator. Yeah. Okay, so we're just pretty much at wrap-up time. Feel free if you have any questions. I think I've covered off the Azure Applied Skills and where you can find some resources around getting accredited in Azure. If you do want to find out more about the learning paths, I've posted that link out. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop it into the chat window, or of course, get in touch with us at the link that's below. There will be a survey coming through, so would appreciate your feedback in terms of what you've taken from today. If you've got any feedback for us, that is invaluable. That'll help us to design the next webinars. So we're already at half an hour in. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of a brief introduction to Azure. Of course, it's just the starting point for some of you for your learning curve. Thank you so much for your time and patience over the last half an hour. Hopefully it's been valuable. Good luck with your continued learning. And if you have any questions, feel free to post out. Or if you're ready to get into meetings, etc., enjoy the rest of your Monday. Thanks very much for coming.